Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel. Last night's game was a bit annoying, wasn't it? Chelsea 0, Fulham 0. We get another clean sheet. We've now kept 3 in a row. Benoit Badiashile, we're going to talk about him today. 270 minutes in a Chelsea shirt in the Premier League, should I say. And he's kept a clean sheet and we haven't conceded a goal. Is there more positives to talk about than negatives? Let me know your thoughts the morning after or the afternoon after, the night before. If you're not yet subscribed to GBFC, we're on the final hurdle towards 250,000 subscribers. And whilst we're at it today, we're going to be talking about Graham Potter's decision to omit Aubameyang from the Champions League squad. And has Graham Potter made the right choices in Mudryk, Felix, and who else was it? Enzo Fernandez. As if I've forgotten after the amount of times I've said his name in the past 7 days. So, I think first of all, let's talk a little bit about last night's game. What did it tell us? I think Mudryk came in for a bit of criticism. He came off at half-time. Since then, we found out from Graham Potter that the reason that Mudryk came off was because he had a cold. I don't know about you, but when I hear a footballer's got a cold, when I first hear it, I'm thinking, what a pathetic excuse that is. But then I remember how I am as a human being when I've got a cold. Everything's a bit slower. I don't really feel like doing any exercise, and this guy's a professional footballer, which does not make him immune to the regular cold. When I first saw that last night, which was just before I managed to go to sleep, and that was at 6 o'clock in the morning, nearly 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, great, he's got a cold and now he wants to come off. Really, really poor take from me. I just thought I'd admit that that's where I'd stood with it. So if you had the same opinions as me, and you've woken up on a Saturday morning and you think, well, Mudryk was a waste of money, maybe give the man a little bit of slack. He had a cold, okay? It is a worthy reason to be hiked off at half-time. So, the 3 players that Chelsea have, before we get into the Aubameyang debate, the 3 players that Chelsea have registered are Enzo Fernandez, Mudryk, and also Joao Felix. I don't know why I'm finding it so difficult to remember the names of those 3 players today. We're going to start off with the reasons why Enzo Fernandez has been picked in this squad. I think last night's performance against Fulham pretty much speaks for itself. When we look at winning the ball back, winning duels, progressive passing, I think the stats from Enzo last night, I read somewhere that the stats from Enzo Fernandez were better than any other midfield performance from any other Chelsea midfielder this season as a whole. Yes, we didn't score any goals. Yes, we didn't win the game. Yes, we should be beating Fulham at home. But Enzo Fernandez is a no-brainer. He's Chelsea's record transfer and he revolutionises the midfield. And I think, obviously for the Champions League, you've got to remember the brilliance of N'Golo Kante is still to come back. And I think when we allow N'Golo Kante to come back into this team in a pivot with Enzo Fernandez, it frees up the creativity of Enzo. And I think it is, once again, last night when we see that Enzo is Chelsea's most creative player, but because of poor performances from Mount, not so great from Gallagher. I thought in the second half, Conor Gallagher improved, but it still wasn't brilliant. So because he still has to kind of sit there in front of the back line, that license to get forward isn't really there right now. I think even with Mateo Kovacic back in the team, that improves Enzo Fernandez massively. But N'Golo Kante is the key player to unlocking the brilliance out of Enzo. I firmly believe that even from what we saw last night, we can confirm that Chelsea have got an absolute gem on our hands. So Enzo, for me, there's no questions about it. There was no debate to be had. The next player is Joao Felix. Now, this is where, with Felix and Mudryk, we get into a bit more of a debate in comparison to leaving out Benoit Badiashile, because from all of the new signings so far, Badiashile has been incredibly consistent and he's been by far the best player. He didn't get sent off and he didn't come off with a cold. So far, he's been the best player. He's played 3 games, Enzo's played 1. Badiashile's the best player, but he misses out. Joao Felix is in. Now, I'm going to give some of my reasons why it could have been Joao Felix over Badiashile. That could be because Atletico Madrid are putting pressure on Chelsea to put him in there, because Atletico Madrid do have reason for Joao Felix to still be playing for Chelsea in the Champions League. And that is, come the summer, if Chelsea want to buy him and Chelsea go all the way in the Champions League and Joao Felix plays a big part in that, then Atletico Madrid's price for Joao Felix goes up. But to give Felix a bit more credit, what we saw in the other game against Fulham. It's funny how so many games against the same teams are coming up. But in the game we lost against Fulham, Chelsea probably wouldn't have lost that match if Felix didn't get sent off. Joao Felix was the difference maker in that game. He was the best player on the pitch. And I think creatively for Chelsea going forward, when we talk about Enzo Fernandez, there is going to be Enzo Felix link up. We saw it again last night. Kai Havertz is not cut out to be the striker. We also saw in the hour that we saw Felix play that he did manage to link up pretty well with Kai Havertz in that game against Fulham. So with Kai Havertz playing in the preferred number 10, Joao Felix as the attacker, Chelsea now finally have a striker in our Champions League squad. If David Fofana would have been your pick over Joao Felix, please let me know in the comments down below. But once again, I think Felix has to be there. Mudryk is player number 3. And the reason I caveated this conversation by explaining that Mudryk wasn't hyped off yesterday because he's an awful footballer and Graham Potter made a mistake in starting him and he thinks Maduiki's a better footballer. Maybe he is. Time will tell. Not even Maduiki was excellent yesterday, but Mudryk went off with a cold. It's a sticky one here because there are certainly 4, maybe after Maduiki's performance last night, 5, that you should absolutely put in to this Champions League squad over some of the previous players that were registered in the squad in the group stages. With Mudryk again, it's a case of we've spent so much money on him and Chelsea do not score enough goals. And I think if Chelsea are to win the Champions League, yes, the debate really comes in here because when we last won the Champions League, and you could also argue 2012, we did that with a solid backline. I don't think you can win the Champions League without a solid defence. But when you look at Reece James coming back from injury, Chilwell, Wesley Fofana coming back from injury. Yes, Koulibaly's been poor, but he's got Champions League experience. And Thiago Silva, this guy behind me, he absolutely speaks for itself. And I think Chelsea, even if you get creativity out of Enzo and Felix, so you could debate maybe Mudryk could have missed out, but then we're relying on Christian Pulisic, who's going to be out injured, can't play both games against Borussia Dortmund in the last 16. Sterling, who really hasn't hit the ground running, and then you just wonder, like, who are Chelsea relying on to score you goals and to create good enough chances to win games against Europe's elite? So you can absolutely vindicate why every single one of those players has made it into the squad. Benoit Badiashile is incredibly unlucky. It's a shame that Chelsea can only register 3, because if it was me, I'd have probably registered 7 or 8 of the new signings. If we could get Santos a work permit, which apparently could take a couple of weeks, then I'd have probably put him in the squad over some of the other players in there as well. So, we've seen why Chelsea have picked those 3. And we can argue why Badiashile misses out because, well, we've got decent defenders and we need to score goals because we don't score goals on the football pitch. However, one man who was omitted from the Champions League squad in the announcement yesterday was Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And the second debate of this video today is whether or not this was the right call from Graham Potter. Is it fair to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang? And before I give my reasons, I would love to ask for your reasons why you think Graham Potter has done this in the comments down below. So, the comments from Graham Potter have been that Pierre has done nothing wrong at all. No problem. Graham Potter then goes on to say it's just unfortunate and Aubameyang will fight for his place until the end of the season. Graham Potter's come out and said this, and I'll be honest, I kind of jumped the gun in my live stream yesterday when the news was dropping that Aubameyang had been omitted from the squad. My immediate reaction was Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is doing what he did at Arsenal, kicking up a fuss. He thinks he's going to lose his place, so then he starts to make life a bit difficult for the manager and everyone else in the dressing room, and maybe he's trying to force his way out of Chelsea Football Club. We know that in January, there was a possibility that Aubameyang could have left, but because he's already played for Barcelona this season, he can only play for Barcelona or Chelsea, and Barcelona wouldn't be able to afford his wages, although they can still go and offer hundreds of millions for various other players. I don't think they did that in Jan, but we know with Barcelona, when there's a will, there's a way. And Barcelona didn't try and find the will for the way, and Graham Potter has seen the same thing in Aubameyang, which is that we're not seeing very much from Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. So in order for people to think about why Graham Potter's done this, there is a big element of risk involved here, because a player of Aubameyang's personality, with the influence that he has in the dressing room, whether or not he's managed to get into that Chelsea dressing room and become the leader that we bought him in to be remains to be seen, because we don't hear too much about him. We don't see much of him on the football field. It's a risk from Graham Potter for taking this guy out of the squad. A risk because now that he's the one player who was in the group stage, who actually played relatively well in a couple of the matches too. He's the one player who's come out. You could expect Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang now to down tools. I mean, I'm not saying that I would be able to vindicate Aubameyang's personal decision to do that, because he's a Chelsea player and somebody needed to miss out, and it just so happens it was him. But you wouldn't be surprised, based off of the track record and history of Aubameyang, if he does. Now, the other side of this debate as to whether or not this was the right decision and a good decision from Graham Potter is maybe there could be a place for Aubameyang in this team due to the new attacking players and creative players further deep up the field that we've managed to bring in. With Enzo Fernandez, maybe there is less reason for Aubameyang to drop so deep to try and get the ball. Maybe Aubameyang could have been more of an advanced option instead of it just being now Joao Felix. We've not got Fofana in there, so if something happens, God forbid, to Joao Felix, then we're back with Kai Havertz up front. Armando Broja's out with an Achilles injury or an ACL injury. So it's like maybe Aubameyang needed to be in that squad as an attacking option. Although I'll give my personal opinion on this. I think Graham Potter's made the right call. I have not seen enough from Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang this season for me to be able to say he deserves to be in there. I think Chelsea probably made a mistake from what we've seen so far in signing this guy. And I hope, as a result of Felix coming in, Mudryk coming in, and Enzo, those three players can galvanise this Chelsea team to give the Champions League a massive run-in. I also hope that Thiago Silva stays fit, Wesley Fofana comes back and stays fit, so that we don't look back on this video in a few weeks' time after 2 legs against Dortmund and think, blimey, we desperately needed Benoit Badiashile. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the news that dropped before the game yesterday. Let me know if you think Potter's made the right call with the 3, and should he have omitted Aubameyang, or should we have taken the risk maybe on saying goodbye to Pulisic because he won't be fit for both games against Dortmund? It's one of those. It's a big question. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As I said earlier, subscribe to GBFC. We're on the way to 250,000. Hit the like button if you're enjoying all the content at the moment. Come on, you Blues.